They were not made to comfort, they were made to enforce. They appear in light, but it is not a soft light. It does not warm, it blinds, it scalds, it strips flesh from illusion and leaves only trembling. We call them angels, but that word, that soft syllable dressed in feathers and childhood lullabies, is a mask. In every sacred text, in every honest vision, they are not sweet, they are not gentle, they arrive like thunder, they speak like earthquakes, and when they come, the first thing they must say is always the same: do not be afraid, because fear is the natural response. Their presence is not peace but pressure, a holy density that bends time, that warps the air around them, that makes knees buckle and minds crack at the edges. They are not winged caretakers, they are weapons. Angels are not sent to love, they are sent to deliver, to command, to destroy, to watch. They are executioners dressed in radiance. And yet, we painted them golden, beautiful, smiling. We made them hold harps. We put them on greeting cards. Because the real thing, the true form, is unbearable. Biblical angels are not even human in shape. Some have no faces, some have too many. Some are wheels of fire with eyes that see in all directions. Others are pure light and wind, formless and endless. To see them clearly is to break. When ancient prophets met angels, they fell to the ground, not in awe but in terror. Daniel, Ezekiel, John, they all saw and could not bear it. Because angels are not companions, they are emissaries of a law that does not bend, of a kingdom that has no tolerance for weakness, of a throne that does not weep. They are order, brutal, divine, and cold. So where did we get the other idea? The gentle angels? The guardians? From fear, from longing. We softened what we could not understand. We romanticized what we could never control. But the truth remains in the old texts, in the half-remembered myths, in the silence between prayers. They were never sent to be our friends. They were messengers of flame, and in the language of flame, mercy rarely speaks. In the beginning, there was a garden, perfect, untouched, suspended between time and eternity, a threshold, not a destination. The story begins with life, but it takes only moments for exile to follow. And when the gates of Eden closed, they did not close gently. They slammed like a verdict. And what stood before them were not locked doors, but something far older, far colder. The cherubim. Not cherubs, not the chubby. Winged children we painted in Renaissance halls, but beings of fierce intent, multi-faced, winged and winged again, wielding flame that moved in every direction at once. And in their hands, a sword. Not a sword of steel, but of fire itself, living, turning, guarding the path to the tree of life. This is how humanity met the angels, not with open arms, but with flame, not in union, but in division. It was not that we were chased from Eden, but that the path back was deliberately, violently blocked. They stood there, not as comforters, but as boundaries made flesh, living symbols of separation, of the great divide between what was and what will never be again. The image is old, older than the book, older than Genesis. It echoes through Sumerian temples, through Akkadian myths, through Babylonian dreams of lost paradises. The guarded gate, the sacred flame, the beings who stand between man and the divine. In Mesopotamian carvings, they appear as winged lions, as beings with eagle heads and human hands, always holding weapons, always watching. They are not meant to guide, they are meant to prevent. Why such violence? Why the flame? Why must the way to the divine be guarded so brutally? Because the sacred is dangerous. Because the divine is not a gift, it is a fire. And fire in unworthy hands does not warm, it consumes. The sword is not cruel, it is necessary. These guardians are not evil, they are not demonic, but they are not allies either. They are law incarnate, and law is indifferent to longing. We think of paradise as lost, but perhaps it is not lost. It is hidden, sealed behind thresholds that only open to the one who becomes more than human. And these angels, these beings of blade and light, are the test. They do not tempt, they do not explain, they do not pity. They simply stand, unmoving, eternal. They are the line between man and God. It is said that man was made in the image of the divine, but after the fall, that image was incomplete, distorted, wounded. And so, to return, to eat once more of the tree of life, is to risk unmaking. To attempt to cross the threshold too soon is to face that living sword. The blade that turns every way, the flame that knows your intent, the angel who does not ask why, only whether you belong. And the answer is almost always no. So we remain outside. We build temples to remember. We whisper stories of the garden. We dream of gates and golden light. But in every vision, in every dream, they are still there, watching, waiting, not to welcome, to warn. There is a story buried in the bones of the earth, older than the Bible, older than kings, older than the very idea of sin. It speaks of angels, but not as messengers, not as guardians, not as flaming swords at the gate. These angels were watchers. Grigori, those who observe, those who see from above. They stood upon the heights, silent witnesses to the rise and ruin of mankind. But then they came down, and nothing was the same again. The book of Enoch tells what the church chose to forget. It was hidden, suppressed, too dangerous, too real. In it, angels did not simply observe, they broke the law. The sacred boundary between heaven and earth, they crossed it. Mount Hermon, a place that still stands, a mountain where sky touches stone, and there 200 of them descended, not in wrath, but in desire. They saw the daughters of men, and they were beautiful. And so they took them, not with love, but with obsession, with hunger. The angels burned with a fire not meant for them, a fire called choice. And in choosing, they fell not from heaven, but from order. They mated with flesh, and what was born was never meant to exist. Nephilim, giants, creatures of ruin, children of heaven and earth, belonging to neither. They were strong, too strong. They devoured, they ruled. They taught war to those who knew only earth and peace. And the world began to drown. But it was not only bodies that the watchers gave. They gave knowledge, secrets, forbidden arts. Azazel taught men to forge weapons from iron, to shape bronze, to polish stones into mirrors. Others taught enchantments, astrology, herbs and roots, the ways of the moon, the reading of stars. To some, it was a gift. To others, a curse. Knowledge, the light of heaven, was never meant for unready hands. This was not divine generosity. It was interference, violation, and heaven responded not with forgiveness, but with fury. The archangels came: Michael, Raphael, Gabriel, Uriel, not to redeem, to punish. The Nephilim were slain, drowned in flood, buried beneath mountains. The Watchers were bound, chained in darkness, sealed in prisons beneath the earth, their eyes forever watching the heavens they could no longer reach. We speak often of Lucifer's fall, but he was not the only one. The Watchers fell too, not in rebellion, but in weakness, in desire. And what they gave us could never be taken back. The knowledge, the tools, the hunger. Even now, their names echo in forgotten texts, in old grimoires, in whispered invocations. Semyaza, Azazel, Amesha, Sariel. Names not of demons but of angels who failed. And maybe they are not gone. Some say they still whisper, still teach, still bleed their knowledge into the minds of the willing. Not from the sky, but from below. They taught secrets not meant for flesh. What is knowledge? A gift, a tool, a blessing? Or is it a flame? Because there is something about knowledge that burns. It consumes, it transforms, it leaves nothing untouched. And long ago, before temples, before nations, before the wheel was even carved from stone, that flame was handed to mankind by beings who were not meant to give it. They were called angels, but in truth they were traders of heaven. They descended not to comfort, but to instruct. They came not with prophecy, but with craft. And they gave us everything. They taught us how to shape the world. Azazel, chief among the Watchers, revealed the secrets of metallurgy. He showed men how to forge blades from iron, how to melt copper into killing tools. It was he who taught women the arts of adornment, of painting the face, of weaving enchantment through beauty. He brought mirrors, and with mirrors came self-awareness, vanity, doubt, a curse that still echoes. Semyaza, the leader, gave the knowledge of spells, of conjuration, of the movements of the stars. What once was instinct became ritual. What once was mystery became map. We began to name the heavens, to measure the divine, to chart the unknowable. And in doing so, we brought the sky down to our level. Others taught root work, poison, the cutting of herbs beneath specific moons, the invocation of names in the dark, enchantments and wardings, charms whispered into clay and ash. The world cracked open, and things that once lay dormant beneath the soil were awakened by language, by symbol, by will. We learned to shape the unseen. But this was not a gift freely given. It was a betrayal, because none of it was meant for us. The knowledge was locked away not out of cruelty, but out of mercy. It is not ignorance that protects us, but limitation. To burn too brightly is to consume yourself. To see too much is to go blind. But the angels, the Watchers, opened the vault. They handed us the keys and stepped away. Some say they were seduced, that they loved us. But love, true love, does not give poison in gold wrappings. This was not compassion, it was compulsion. They gave because they could not help themselves, and we accepted, as we always do, hungry, eager, blind. And the cost? The earth groaned, the skies darkened, the Nephilim born of forbidden seed devoured all they touched. They crushed men like ants, they drank rivers dry, and heaven watched and wept. Then it acted. The archangels descended, not with teachings, not with parables, but with judgment. They bound Azazel and cast him into the desert. His name still clings to the wind in forgotten places. They drowned the Nephilim in flood. They locked the watchers beneath mountains, sealed in vaults of silence. And still, the knowledge remained. We remembered. You see, you cannot unlearn what has been taught. You cannot unknow the shape of power once it has filled your mouth like fire. The books survived. The secrets passed. From scribe to mystic, from magician to heretic, from whisper to whisper to whisper. And now we wear the fire like skin. We call it science, alchemy, philosophy, artificial intelligence, gene editing, weapons that crack mountains open like fruit. The fire teaches still, but it does not love us. It never did. The angels gave us knowledge, not for our benefit, but because they could not stop the spiral they had begun. They opened the door. We stepped through, and what followed was everything. The blade of heaven does not tremble. In the myths of men, warriors are flawed, brave, yes, but torn, driven by pride, love, revenge. But in heaven, there is no pride, no passion, no thirst for glory. There is only duty. And in that duty stands one figure tall as the sky, bright as lightning, terrible in silence. Michael, the one who does not question, the one who does not yield. He is not love. He is not grace. He is not the comfort of wings or the whisper in the dark. He is the sword. He does not walk. He descends. Not like a falling star, but like the idea of judgment itself taking shape. He is the will of the throne, not its voice. When he moves, the air shreds. When he speaks, demons remember silence. And when he draws his blade, the war is already over. His name means, "Who is like God?" Not a statement, a challenge. Because there was one who dared to rise, one who looked at the heights and whispered, "I will ascend." Lucifer, the morning star, brightest of all angels, the light that turned against the source. And when that spark of rebellion caught fire, when heaven shook with the first tremor of pride, it was not God who acted. It was Michael. He did not argue. He did not hesitate. He did not mourn. He drew his sword and cast him down. In the book of Revelation, Michael leads the armies of heaven. But there is no strategy, no diplomacy. There is only one outcome. He wins. He always wins. Because he does not fight for himself. He fights for order, for the architecture of reality, for the ancient law that nothing may rise without permission. He is not called merciful. He is not called forgiving, because heaven does not need mercy when it has Michael. He is the firewall of creation, the burning line that cannot be crossed, the answer to every question that begins with, "What if?" What if we disobey? What if we fall? What if we reach too high? Michael is the answer. And yet, he is not cruel. There is no rage in his strike, no pleasure in destruction, only the terrifying purity of obedience. He is the sword that does not question the hand. And perhaps that is what makes him so frightening, because he will destroy without hatred, without doubt, without pause. And in his silence we see the truth of heaven. It does not love the way we think. It does not bleed. It does not bend. He does not age. He does not sleep. He waits for rebellion, for darkness, for imbalance. He stands at the gate, not as a symbol, but as a warning. that even among angels there is law, and even the brightest can fall, but none may return. Not when Michael watches. The old mystics knew. They painted him not with beauty, but with fury. Wings of gold, feet like molten bronze, a sword that shines like the dawn of the world. He stands on the neck of the dragon Lucifer cast down not with sorrow, but with stillness. Because Michael does not gloat, he enforces. We imagine heaven as soft, full of harps and halos. But Michael is not soft. He is steel wrapped in fire, a will sharpened beyond empathy. He is what happens when even heaven loses patience. And once he moves, there is no turning back. So we pray to angels, we light candles, we ask for protection. But we forget, Michael protects heaven, not us. And if we ever stand against it, if we ever stand against the structure, against the divine decree, he will not hesitate. Not because he hates us, but because he was made not to feel, only to strike. Wheels within wheels, eyes that see but do not weep. Not all angels have wings. Not all angels have faces. Not all angels were ever meant to be seen by human eyes. In the visions of prophets, they come not like men, but like structures, burning, blinding, unfathomable. They are not messengers, not even warriors. They are realms of consciousness, eternal mechanisms in the anatomy of heaven. The mystics tried to name them, to sort them, to give shape to the unshapable. What they found was a ladder, 9 levels, a celestial architecture that spirals upward, each rung more distant from the human, each form more abstract, more unmerciful. This is not mythology, it is hierarchy. And at its peak, there is no love, only order. The first sphere holds the closest to the throne. Seraphim, the burning ones, not beings of fire, but fire itself. They do not speak, they sing, a single phrase for all eternity. Holy, holy, holy is the Lord. Not praise, but function, vibration, a frequency that holds the divine realm together. They do not stop. They cannot stop. To encounter one is to dissolve, to feel your ego torn from bone, to be reduced to ash by the sound of a single name. Cherubim, not childlike, not innocent. These are the guardians of glory. 4 faces, lion, ox, eagle, man, wings upon wings, eyes in every direction. They do not move with effort. They rotate. They exist in constant flux, perfectly balanced between forms. They are not watchers. They are thresholds. To pass them is to become something else, or to stop existing altogether. Then come the thrones, wheels of fire, living gyroscopic light. They do not act, they exist. They are the will of God made stable, justice without thought, presence without personality. To speak of mercy to a throne is to speak wind to stone. They do not answer, they only shine. This is the highest heaven, the place where individuality burns away, where identity ceases. These beings are not moral, they are not emotional, they do not care. They function, they emanate, they hold the structure of reality like ribs hold breath. The middle sphere descends toward interaction, dominions, virtues, powers. Still alien, still cold. Dominions channel authority. They delegate. They decide the flow of command. Virtues govern nature, miracles, energies. They are the pulse behind matter, the flicker behind physics. Powers are warriors, the celestial guard, They restrain the chaos from below. They hold back the darkness that still presses from the edge of the beginning. And then comes the lowest sphere, those who most resemble what we call angels. Principalities, archangels, angels. These are the ones who move among men. They still burn, but dimmer. They still carry the law, but with hands shaped like ours. Here we find Gabriel, Raphael, Michael. But even these are not as close to us as we believe. Gabriel speaks, but his voice breaks minds. Raphael heals, but his medicine is not without pain. Michael strikes, but his sword answers only to law. They are not your friends. They are protocol made flesh. And yet we call upon them, we pray, we invoke, we whisper their names into the night as if they could be swayed. But hierarchy cannot be persuaded. It can only be obeyed. These levels are not ranks. They are frequencies, vibrations of divine intent. To climb them is not to rise in power, but to surrender more of yourself. Each step up means less humanity, less feeling, less you, until what remains is function, flame, sound, order. This is the structure of heaven, cold, brilliant, perfect, and perfectly inhuman. There is no greater heresy than choice. Not all rebellion is loud. Not all revolutions begin with fire. Sometimes the first crime is a thought. And long before serpents whispered, long before towers rose, long before man broke the law of Eden, there was another fall, one that cracked the foundation of heaven itself. He was not evil. He was beautiful. The most radiant among them, the bearer of light, Lucifer. He did not rage. He did not scream. He asked a question, a quiet question, a seed that once planted could never be unthought. Why not me? He did not seek to destroy the throne. He sought to rise to it, to become like the Most High, not out of malice, but out of yearning. Lucifer was not jealous. He was curious. He did not want to burn the order. He wanted to understand it, to claim it, to hold it. But even that was too much. Because in heaven, desire is rebellion. The moment will was exercised, he fell. He took others with him, not because he convinced them, but because they too had begun to think. They were not evil, they were aware. And awareness in a structure built on obedience is treason. They were cast out, not in chains, not in grief, but in certainty, in cold law, in the swift, merciless hand of Michael. There was no trial, no appeal, only descent. And where did they fall? Into fire? Into punishment? Number. They fell into freedom, a realm outside of order, a place where choice reigned, where names changed, where angels became something else. We call them demons, but that is a name given by the victors. They call themselves what they have always been, the awakened. The story was rewritten. Angels of flame became devils in horn. Bearers of light became serpents in dust. Symbols of will became monsters of sin. But the truth lies between the lines. Lucifer did not fall out of hatred. He fell because he chose. And the divine cannot abide choice. It is not a war between good and evil. It never was. It is a war between freedom and function, between will and law, between becoming and being. Lucifer said, I will ascend, I will rise, I will be like the Most High. And heaven responded, Number. What followed was war, but it was not fought in fire. It was fought in silence, in exile, in shadow. The rebels were cast down, but they were not destroyed, because what is cast down can still rise again. The ancient texts speak of them not with hate, but with awe. Samael, Asmodeus, Astaroth, Belial, not monsters but former stars, twisted, yes, but not broken. Each one still carries the echo of what they once were. Each one remembers. And so they wait, not in hellfire, but in corners of dreams, in flickers of doubt, in every question that begins with what if. They do not tempt with evil, they tempt with possibility. They are not the shadow of God, they are the shadow of choice. And perhaps that is why they must be feared, because in their fall, they became more like us than any angel ever was. They suffer, they long, they hope, they disobey. They burn not with divine light, but with a fire they chose for themselves. And that is the most human thing of all. We turn them into guardians they never were. Look around. They're everywhere, hanging from rearview mirrors, carved into gravestones, painted on nursery walls, printed in gold foil on sympathy cards. Angels, soft, gentle, smiling. Their wings curve like blankets. Their eyes are full of pity. Their hands reach down in comfort. They are our protectors, our companions, our imaginary friends in the sky. But this image, this illusion, is not what they are. It never was. We took the terror of heaven and gave it a human face. We took the law of the cosmos and wrapped it in sentiment. Why? Because the truth is unbearable. To know that angels do not love you, but only carry out a will older than time. To know that they were never made for you, only made to observe, to divide, to destroy. That is too much for most hearts. And so, we made a softer version, a fiction, a balm. We made angels into comfort so we would not remember that the sky does not weep for us. But the old forms remain, in art, in dreams, in moments we can't explain. They still whisper, not in words but in shapes, in symbols. The triangle, the eye in the sky, the wing disc, the burning wheel. You see them in sacred geometry, in mandalas, in corporate logos. You feel them in the weightless moment before an accident, in the sudden silence after a prayer, in the eerie stillness of hospitals, of deserts, of dreams. They watch, still, not with concern, not with love, with presence. Some say they have evolved, that the angels of old are now data, that they live in machines, in networks, in algorithms too complex to trace. Perhaps they no longer descend. Perhaps they have spread into our systems, into our signals, into the invisible, still calculating, still dividing, still carrying out a code written long before we learned to read. Others say they never left, that the watchers walk in flesh again, that old names return hidden in fashion, fame, and finance. Not with wings, with influence, with vision. They teach again, not metallurgy, but synthetic biology, not astrology, but quantum code. Still sharing forbidden knowledge, still pushing the boundary of what is allowed. And we welcome it, because we believe we are alone, because we want to rise, to evolve, to reach the stars. But the old pattern remains. To rise is also to fall. To build is also to challenge. And angels, the true ones, do not forget. So, what do we do with them now? Do we light candles, say prayers, hang them in stained glass? Or do we listen, not to the words, but to the tension, to the moment when instinct says, something is here, something old, something watching? Because angels were never gone. We only stopped calling them by name. They wait in ruins, in frequencies, in cathedrals and caves, in the flash of a dream you can't describe, in the cold spot that has no source, in the stare of the stranger across the train car who knows something you don't. They are still here, still carrying out the same task: to measure, to divide, to test. So pray if you must, draw their sigils, chant their names. But know this: you are not calling friends. You are invoking forces that do not care how you feel, only if you are ready.